We're very, very fortunate to be in the midst of two big technological transformations, AI and crypto. And Robinhood's at the center of this. Even the US government has declared that those are the two big technological priorities of the administration. We feel like everything's kind of aligning to make a lot of progress here, both as a company and as the United States, which I think should only help us.
Welcome to the Tech NT Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Blacksburg, here today with Alex Finn, Penny2X, and a very special guest, the CEO and founder of Robinhood, Vlad Tenev. Vlad, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Thanks for having me. I love the energy. I'm pumped.
I am still riding the high from the Robinhood Gold event that happened last night, where you were just firing on all cylinders, right? New product, new cylinder, new vertical. And so we saw so much come at us, from strategies to Cortex to banking. Walk us through your take on this event, how it went, everything that was revealed, and what excites you the most.
Well, as you're probably not surprised, I liked the event. It had been something that we've been working on for a while, not just the event itself, but also the products. And, the team's been hard at work, basically across multiple fronts, trying to build a comprehensive financial app that can serve every dollar that you have, whether you're buying, you're selling, you're trading, or you're investing for the long term. We want to be the place where you can hold any asset or conduct any financial transaction. And I think this was a big step, because now if you think about it, your money coming in can be in Robinhood banking. You can have it invested passively with strategies. You can trade it directly with, futures, options, equities, crypto, or prediction markets. And we've also acquired human advisor firm, Trade PMR, where if you want someone that helps you with all your wealth, they can do that. And credit card can help you spend it. So we're basically helping people with all of their daily financial needs. And we'd like to expand that to being the best place for all of your dollars.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great event. You even got money delivered to you mid-event.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better than that.
I gave it away, though, Deepak and Sid, I feel like, did a very nice job, so I had to tip them. No, I think a lot of people still need cash, and it's very annoying if you need cash, but you can't get it. So I think that's one of the things that maybe was a little bit controversial.
Oh, for sure.
You had a few people. So we demonstrated cash delivery, which is kind of an exciting new feature for our banking service. And I think you have two types of criticism, right? One is who uses cash anymore. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is a lot of people do. Cash is still very, very popular. Lots of volume, lots of people go to ATMs, so we can improve upon that. The other criticism is perhaps that, getting cash delivered to you might be dangerous, right? But going to an ATM is super dangerous. It's like one of the most dangerous things. ATM crime has gone up 600% between 2019 and 2022. So you really people are worried about all sorts of things. Skimmers, people looking over your shoulder, people following you. It's not a great experience. So if we can streamline that and bring it into the future, and you can get cash delivered to you when you need it, just like you would for food delivery or getting an Uber. I think you don't need the branch office. Yeah. You can actually do digital banking from your phone without actually needing a physical branch.
It's a full suite of features, like you're saying. Also, of course, the credit cards, like you mentioned, another 100,000 rolling out. We've got one of the gold, solid gold credit cards right here. Definitely we'll get those out in front of everybody.
That's the original.
Aren't they cool?
Made my first purchase last night.
That's the baby. Yeah.
This is the baby. So we'd love to see those coming out. So yeah, it really is a full ecosystem. With the products that were announced last night, who is your target market in your eyes?
I think the target market right now is basically a millennial, someone who's under the age of 40, comfortable with sort of like digital products. They tend to be on the frontier of innovation. They don't need to go to a physical brick and mortar branch office. A lot of them prefer to, just do transactions themselves on their phone than going and talking to a person. So that's our core market. And we kind of grew with the millennials. When Robinhood started, millennials were in their early 20s. Yeah. Now we're kind of a little bit older, and we're trying to expand. So we don't want to just be a millennials company. We want Gen Z and always the next generation to be using Robinhood and starting with Robinhood. So we're making I think a valiant attempt to actually go younger as we go along, and there's more work to do there. We also want to serve customers that are a little bit older. I think that's where things like Trade PMR come in. We're expanding into more passive advisory options comes in. Robinhood Legend, which is our desktop platform. So millennials definitely are core, digitally savvy millennials, but we're expanding from there.
One last question for me on things that were announced, and I want to turn over some of the other guys here. As a investor and somebody that has this community, what we love is your transparency with the numbers. So you're consistently sharing, hey, we had this many deposits, this much info, this many flows, piece along those lines. And you even share a lot of the data on people's trading activity inside the app with us. As we see banking now and others like that, is there a similar push for transparency in regards to direct deposits and other items like that, so that investors can really see everything happening inside the company?
Yeah, I think that since we're public, we actually have to share performance data, right? So our revenues and our costs, I mean, to the extent which we have visibility into them, which historically has been much better on the cost than the revenues, because with something like crypto, for instance, volumes can go up 3 to 4x in a week. So forecasting each individual line item becomes tricky. But banking's a more steady business. It's not like 1 week the demand for banking is going to jump 400% relative to the current week. So I think you should expect that generally to continue. I think that whether it's a retail investor or institutional, we've generally been very transparent, and we've tried to make it as easy as possible for analysts who are covering us to model the business out. We've been giving more and more numbers on a monthly basis and trying to iterate on that. So I think you should expect that. It might not happen right away, but as soon as banking gets of significant size where it's actually impacting the financials, I think you'll see more and more transparency.
Yeah, I love it. It's a huge thing. Penny, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I like to focus a lot on like the innovation and disruption. I'm not so much a financial guy, but I bought my first individual stock on Robinhood.
Amazing.
And I think it goes, it speaks towards the democratization and the mission that you have of like bringing finance to the masses, things that normally you'd only have access to if you're like ultra wealthy or things like that. I'm curious, I think it takes a certain type of person to drive that type of innovation, to drive that type of disruption. I'm curious what it is about your past that got you excited about that mission. What is it that made, building Robinhood what you dedicate your life to?
Yeah, I think when I started, what motivates me is making discoveries and doing new things. So before I became an entrepreneur, I wanted to be a physicist and a mathematician. And really the whole purpose of physics is to understand how the universe works. And, you answer the big questions like what happened before the Big Bang, and these are like quasi-religious questions, right? So I was really interested in that. And the way you make a contribution is by creating something new. So as an academic, if you create something new, then the dream would be, 50 or 100 years later, kids are learning about it in their math and physics classes. So that really motivated me. And I think if you translate that to technology, it's the equivalent of creating a new theory or inventing something new is building a new product that lots and lots of people use and get value from. And I think that it's very meritocratic in a way because people have lots of choices. If you don't create something new, nobody's going to use it. I mean, there's lots and lots of banks out there, lots of brokerages, lots of crypto trading platforms. So if we didn't innovate, I think that we would be irrelevant. Like no successful company actually can get away too long, I think, without without actually creating new stuff that's differentiated.
It seems like the banking and finance industry in general has been like really slow about that. But there's something about you where, you took the bull by the horns and really just sort of changed the way that stock purchasing works. And now you're working on banking and these other things, the like investment planning type stuff. Why that industry? Like, why is that what you chose to disrupt? I feel like you're probably a disruptor one way or another, but why is personal finance important to you?
I think personal finance, if I grew up I think if I look back on my childhood, there were a lot of things that happened that made me very acutely aware about personal finance. So the first thing was, my family essentially immigrated from Europe to the US in 1992. And the country I came from, Bulgaria, went through hyperinflation. So in 1991, the inflation rate was something like 150%, which is crazy. And
our inflation seemed like nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very, very different, 150% inflation. And then in 1996, after I moved to the US, Bulgaria had the unfortunate honor of having the highest inflation rate in the world. It was like 1,500%. So when the inflation rate gets that high, basically they have to keep adding zeros to all the bills. You go 1 year and it's like, the 2 leva bill is what you use to buy a burger at McDonald's. Next year it's 2,000. So it was just crazy. And I think it just made me very, both the fact that my parents were starting over in a new country and we had to be very, we had to pinch pennies and we were all kind of in it together trying to survive off my dad's grad student salary. That made me very attuned to finances, and also my home country going through hyperinflation and, my grandparents needing my parents to send money back to them because they didn't have good options for how to preserve their wealth in Bulgaria. And then you fast forward 2008, which was the year that I graduated college. And, most of the people that didn't go to grad school like I did got their first jobs. So 2008, Lehman Brothers went under. So you had the global financial crisis, and a lot of my friends who ended up in banking worked at places like Lehman Brothers, where it's sort of like they start work and then a couple of weeks later they have to take all their stuff out with boxes because, they lost their jobs. And so finance was just a big part of what was going on. It was the most important industry when I was graduating, just because there was so much change. And we really saw an opportunity to take advantage of all of the tectonic shifts that were going on in finance, because, to us, it seemed exciting. It was like so important. And there was just so much opportunity, which sounded weird because it was the global financial crisis. Seems like a weird time to get into the industry. But in hindsight, I think that was like it created an opening for us to come in and really change how it worked.
Stepping into the financial industry, like from the outsider's perspective, it's like all giants. Was that intimidating going in, deciding to interrupt or disrupt such a established industry?
Yeah, I think that at the time, when I first got started, my co-founder and I had a previous company and we were doing algorithmic trading. And so, I think it didn't seem as scary as you might think, because the giants are so big that they have, so many different departments, so many lines of business, a lot of, if you look at a big bank like a JP Morgan or a Wells Fargo, a lot of their revenue is actually from helping other companies in the financial industry get off the ground. So they're involved in trade execution, prime brokerage, all these services. So it's almost like, the big guys were big, but when we were very, very small, particularly at the beginning, we felt like we were so small that, nobody would really consider us a threat. And then we would run into all these small guys that, we were all just like, how to say it, little beavers trying to like dig our way through this big mountain, the mountain's so big that you don't really even think about the beaver next to you. You're just trying to drill as deep of a hole as you can to survive. So no, I didn't really think about competition at all.
When you started, did you have like an intent to grow a huge company, maybe even like bigger than Robinhood is now? Did you think you were going to be acquired at some point? Did you ever like turn down acquisitions from some of the giants? How's that process been?
Yeah, not really. We never were engaged in any serious acquisition discussion. I would say that at the very beginning, when maybe we would have been open to it, nobody really took us seriously. So they probably weren't willing to pay very much, right? And then I think by the time we had proven the business model and we had shown that we were successful and probably gotten to the point where people would be willing to pay a decent amount for us, we probably wouldn't have been willing to accept that.
Not interested in it.
Yeah, we were kind of in a weird spot to never really engage in anything seriously on that front.
That's a good thing. You kind of touched on something which I think, Alex, you want to dig into, which is big companies actually innovating.
Yeah. So I was on Thinkorswim for 10 years before I switched to Robinhood a few years ago, then went all in on everything you guys do because it's the best experience in finance by far. But one thing was in the 10 years I was on Thinkorswim, literally not one part of the platform changed. They didn't change the buttons, the text, the feed, nothing changed in those 10 years.
Yeah.
Why is it in the face of your guys' success, with how much, you're growing every single day with the features you're releasing, why is it these legacy companies, which I think people look at Thinkorswim as like, that's like the creme de la creme.
Yeah.
Why is it they refuse to innovate in the face of what everything you guys are doing?
Well, I think Thinkorswim, by the way, is a company that we have tremendous respect for. They've done a lot of great things.
To Thinkorswim.
Yeah. Steve Quirk, who was at Thinkorswim when it got acquired by Ameritrade, which then, of course, got acquired by Schwab, runs brokerage for us. He's the GM of brokerage. So, yeah, he was a startup guy at Thinkorswim back in the day. I think, a lot of the people that made Thinkorswim are unfortunately not there anymore. And
so that's what happened. They all came up.
They all left.
I mean, we've got some of them for sure, but Tom Sosnoff went and did another thing, Tasty Trade. So,
great platform too.
I think having the right people in place is important, and companies change too, and I think maintaining the right team, people that care, people that can execute well, is actually extremely difficult. And I think as long as we can keep doing that, knock on wood, we've been very successful. I like our chances, but nothing is guaranteed, right? Once great companies often wither into obscurity, and you can count on, two hands how many companies have been around for over 100 years.
So, I mean, I'm 34. I don't know a single person in my age range that's on anything but Robinhood. They're all on this platform. What do you think it is these other legacy companies just get wrong about millennials in this age range and just kind of the middle class millennial?
Yeah, I think they were late to two things. And it was kind of the two important things that Robinhood introduced. They were late to mobile, being a first-class experience, and they were somewhat late to zero commissions. So, the industry kind of joined us and followed us to zero commissions in 2019.
Rapidly.
Which was about 6 years after Robinhood was announced, right? We said we were doing it in 2013. We launched in 2014. 2019, they were like, okay, we're going to lower commissions to zero. And they all did it one after the other.
Was there one big name that did it first? And was it Schwab or something? And then
they all did it within 2 weeks of each other.
Yeah.
I want to say Interactive did it first.
Yeah.
And then maybe Schwab and then TD. But yeah, it was within 2 weeks of each other. And I think several of them did it the same day even. And I remember it was crazy because TD and E-Trade were public. And I think they announced it the same day their stocks went down 35% in one day.
I remember that day.
Yeah, it was like a cataclysmic event. And then it's funny, people ask me, you always see the people on Twitter saying, oh, but you're paying more now than you were back when there was a commission. And I always think to myself, well, don't they remember that when forced to go to zero commissions, these companies lost more than a third their value, right? So very clearly, money is going from profits into customers' pockets, which I think is amazing. But I think that those two things we got right early on. And I think now the big thing that a customer of Robinhood looks at is you're always getting new stuff. I mean, we're launching new things on a weekly basis. So even if you have an issue or some kind of concern or you feel like something's missing, you see that the rate of improvement is so high that, fortunately, I think a lot of our customers are giving us a pass at not having the comprehensive suite of tools because they know that they're probably coming in short order.
I'll give you one last one. It's been interesting the last couple months watching everyone and every company drop meme coins. They feel like, okay, there's less rules. We can do more things. If there were no rules and regulations around Robinhood, what would you build? What would you add? If you had complete freedom to build what you wanted, what would you add to Robinhood?
Yeah, I mean, I did an op-ed in the Washington Post a couple weeks ago, actually, and it was arguing that there should be much less restrictions on investing in private companies. Mm-hmm. So I think the meme coin stuff is good. I'm not against meme coins by any means, but I think what you're seeing there is what happens if there's no clarity and no rules around actually having productive assets on blockchains. So we're now in the bizarre state of it being very, very clear that meme coins are fine to list. But if you list productive assets like securities,
right,
not allowed. And so, it's a self-fulfilling criticism. People are like, oh, well, crypto is only useful for meme coins and all this useless stuff. Show me some real things. But connecting real things to crypto technology is illegal now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would put private companies on blockchains so that you could buy, you can buy shares of OpenAI or SpaceX or some of these great companies. I would also make it easier for entrepreneurs that are getting started. Let's say you wanted to create a new company and you wanted to issue a token and, raise capital, primary capital for your business. I would make it so that, we can make that as easy as possible. And you could tap into the global crypto market to do that. So I think market structure, clarity on the legislative side, and making it easier to trade and buy and issue what are considered securities in the current regime on crypto technology is going to be an important and big opportunity.
Would you ever do a secondary market for private companies that have stock options employees want to sell, things like that?
Yeah, so I think that it's all one and the same. If you can tokenize private companies, basically at the absolute earliest stage of capital of company formation, that's mostly interesting for founders that are trying to raise primary capital. But let's say you get to the scale of an OpenAI or a SpaceX, where you're worth hundreds of billions in market cap. Then it becomes the same technology, the same capability becomes mostly interesting to senior employees who want to diversify and do secondary sales. So I think it's really the same mechanism, just who's the audience, the founder for earlier stage and sort of like early employees who want to diversify in the later stages.
I have a two-part question, kind of a separate topic, a little bit back to what Penny was talking about earlier. This is maybe like going back to the earlier days of Robinhood. So one, was there a inflection point where it was like, hey, we're doing something cool. And then one day it was like, wow, like we got that deal or this opened up or a million people downloaded the app today or something where you were just like, this is going to work. I know it. I feel it in my bones.
Yeah, I think there was a very clear separation when we first launched the Robinhood waitlist and announced zero commission trading, that was a big inflection point. And, before that point, we had tried a bunch of things, various things, none of which ended up being successful. Like we launched a social network for traders where you can rate companies and, you could communicate with other traders, share news and do all sorts of things like that. And the idea was, okay, while we get the brokerage license, we'll build this great community. And then once we get the brokerage license, we'll let them trade and it'll be great. Well, we never got much traction on the trading community, and we were trying all the growth hacks and reading all the books about how to grow communities and everything. And, we had difficulty getting over 100 DAUs, for instance. Wow. And then we announced the wait list for Robinhood commission-free trading, and we had something like 50,000 waitlist signups in a week. With no growth hacks, just like a very simple landing page communicating what we were doing.
Wow.
And then more and more kept signing up and referring each other, and it kept accelerating. We had close to 1 million in the first year, and we started getting invited to all the news TV shows. CNBC would call me, Bloomberg would call me and my co-founder, say, we need you guys to come on. And so, it was very, very clear that there was product market fit. Before we couldn't get anyone to return our calls. Suddenly they were calling us. More and more people were signing up. The graphs were up and to the right. So that's when we thought, okay, this has legs, like this is going to work. Of course, there were different inflection points throughout where, maybe things accelerated quite a bit and the opportunity was bigger than when we initially thought. But yeah, that was the first one. And I think you asked a question, Penny, earlier about, did I want it to be a huge company when I got started? I remember sitting in a small apartment that was working, that kind of like served as our office in the East Village in Manhattan, right above this bar called the Lit Lounge that was open till 4 a.m. every single night. People would be like smoking cigarettes in the Lit Lounge. So it was humble beginnings, but a lot of fun. And basically late night, my co-founder and I had conversations about, how big could this be? What if one day this company was worth $100 million? I forget if he said it or I did, but at that time we were like, that's completely insane. We should just like go back to earth here because, at that time that seemed like a crazy outcome. Or, making $1 million in revenue, that seemed crazy. But I think what happens is it's sort of like climbing a ladder, you reach one rung and you just kind of keep going to the next thing. And then it feels normal after a while. You don't even really think about it.
Do you feel pressure to continue to raise the bar?
I mean, in a way, yes, but not just, not to like make more money, but just because we've accomplished so much and we have resources, can we use that to accomplish even more? And, we've done well, but also new opportunities come up, new opportunities that increase the scope of the mission and the ambition.
When I think about how hard it was to like buy an individual stock before Robinhood and then post Robinhood, I just download an app and push a couple buttons. You've got a lot of the like major disruption behind you already. How much do you see in terms of greenfield for the future, like new areas for innovation versus, like what you've already done?
Yeah, I mean, AI is a big area. We announced Robinhood Cortex, which is our first consumer-facing suite of AI products. And that's just the beginning. You should expect to see that accelerate in much the same way the rest of our product development has accelerated. Yeah, I mean, we're very, very fortunate to be in the midst of two big technological transformations, AI and crypto. And Robinhood's at the center of this. And, even the US government has declared that those are the two big technological priorities of the administration. So we feel like everything's kind of aligning to make a lot of progress here, both as a company and as the United States, which I think should only help us. If the United States cements a leadership position in regulating and making this the best place to do that type of business, then that also helps Robinhood and the whole industry. And then we can just kind of execute on top of that foundation.
Yeah. I want to bring you back in, but real quick, I love how you described the inflection point of, hey, the doors, they started coming to us, right?
Yeah.
And it got to that point, and I talk with a lot of teams, and I'm like, hey, like, you're going to have to go out and knock those doors until eventually they come to you, and that's when the shift.
Yep.
On the other side, though, Elon Musk talks a lot about how there was a few moments at Tesla, but one really specific one, I guess over a decade ago at this point, where they were almost about to go bankrupt, right?
Yep.
The company's about to go out of business. Then he gets a call with a loan, and the money came in, or the grants, right? And it saved the company. Were there any of those like do or die moments for Robinhood?
Well, I think more recently, Gamestop was very scary for us. I mean, we got a $3 billion collateral call from the NSCC in the middle of the night. And I think up until that point, we had raised something around $1 billion in the company's history. So yeah, that was very, very tricky to navigate. And obviously the acute issue of sorting out the collateral and making sure the company could continue to operate, that was a big one. But also the longer term of, just dealing with customers that were unhappy, that wanted to buy GameStop and other meme stocks, and feeling like we had let them down. And that was more of a slow burn. So we had the acute pain of
What's that moment like in the night? Like you get the call, like what do you do?
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone really knew what was going on. It was like, I think first it was kind of the fog of war. Like, okay, what's the problem? Is the collateral call real, or is it an error? I mean, that was our first reaction was, did a human give this to us? Have we talked to a human, or did we just get an automated email with some numbers? Are the numbers real? Are they returning our calls? What are the real numbers? And also they kept changing. It was like, you get a call and it's like, it's not 3 billion, it's 1.8. Oh, actually it's 700 million. What's the number going to be tomorrow? And what I did was, Jason and I, Jason's the CFO, were like, well, one thing's for sure, it would be very nice to have some more capital right now. So we got on the phones and started calling all of our investors and ended up raising something like $3.5 billion. Wow. Because, I mean, even once we'd resolved the immediate issue at hand, we didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. We didn't know if this was just a new market normal of everyone's just going to be putting money into,
New stocks,
retail names. And now this was going to just keep growing and getting bigger and bigger. So we were getting ready for that.
When you're in the midst of a mimetic rebellion, where it was literally a meme to attack you and Robinhood, what is like the mindset you have when you have like all these trolls and losers on Twitter, like come for no reason at all? You have a great product, coming for no reason. Like, what is the mindset behind defending yourself against that?
Mimetic rebellion is a good way to pull it. Yeah, that's a good one.
Completely didn't even my Apple Notes.
Yeah, what's interesting? So, have you read any mimetic theory? Rene Girard, have you guys heard of that guy?
No.
So he created this idea that then motivated Peter Thiel, who was one of his students, to start writing about it. But this was a Stanford professor in, I think, like French language and philosophy. And he came up with this mimetic theory, which basically said that all of human progress comes from humans like imitating each other. You can think of it when there's a baby, it learns through imitation, and, it does what the parents do or what other kids do. Essentially conflict is driven by this as well. I mean, if I see something that you have and I want it, that puts us in conflict. And actually, there's kind of the conventional wisdom is that civilization began from agriculture, right? And, we started like having animals around and settling rather than being hunter-gatherers. This guy, Rene Girard, actually philosophized through this mimetic theory that civilization began through human sacrifice and animal sacrifice. And it was sacrifice of animals that led to agriculture, because it's like, we have these animals that we're sacrificing. Let's just keep them around for a little bit longer so that we have a good buffer. Oh, animals being around, now we can like, oh, this is actually a valuable thing. And in the same way, he theorized that monarchy, having a king, came from human sacrifice as well. And that the king himself is actually the sacrificial victim that was able to stay his sacrifice longer and longer. So all of this to say that, how do you feel as someone that's in the midst of a mimetic rebellion? The best thing to do is to stay alive, right? Because the original kings were victims of mimetic rebellion that managed to stay their own execution indefinitely.
Absolute pleasure having you on. Very successful gold event. Final question here. What do we have to look forward to throughout the rest of this year?
Oh, easy. We've got a crypto event in France in about 3 months. So that one's a lot of fun. Johan's been seeing all the other, Johan's our crypto general manager. He's been seeing Quirk and Deepak and Sid and all the other GMs having a lot of fun. So he wants to get in on the action and launch some fun products of his own. So we'll have some surprises in Europe. I think people really like that. And then we're also starting to plan the next Hood Summit, which is going to be our active trader event, follow up to last year's Miami event. Oh. So that's coming later this year. And we'll see if we can squeeze some other, I mean, we'll certainly have other announcements and launches, but we're not slowing down. No, quite the contrary. We're looking to speed up and deliver even more.
Any final message to retail investors?
Love you guys. Keep cranking, keep grinding. We'll certainly do the same.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody who tuned in to this very special episode of Tech and Tea. This was amazing. I hope that you continue to watch. And of course, if you haven't already checked it out, go to Robinhood, sign up for the new products and services that are coming. You will be amazed. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.